Welcome everyone to another new episode of NMPC Plus. It's a hot one today, which doesn't mean anything for you because you're listening and you're not in this room. You're not joining us here in our library/studio. But just want you to know it is a hot one. I am, of course, Josh. I am the worship pastor at New Mercy Palisades Church, little old church plant that could. And I am joined, as always, by my friend, my colleague, my sister, Bobae. Hello, Pastor Bobae.
Hello.
We are not, however, joined by our fearless leader, Pastor Key, because the man upped and got the Rona.
Yeah. Dude, you're the last one standing. How is it possible, Josh, that you've avoided this when your wife's had it twice?
She's had it twice.
And I've had it. Pastor Key's had it. I mean, like, so many people around you.
You want to know why?
What is?
Because I'm an athlete and I'm strong. I got the strong... Actually, I don't know. I say that and I'm sweating like an athlete right now. You know what? I have no idea. It's not like I've been super careful.
Yeah.
And it's not like... I mean, we saw Pastor Key the night that, you know, he possibly maybe had gotten how he'd gotten... You know, I was talking to him pretty close.
Yeah. I was sitting right next to him. I stole his fries.
Well, there's natural immunity in the French fry oil. I don't know. You know, I really don't know. My wife keeps kind of like shaking her head, looking at me like, I can't believe you haven't gotten it yet. I just look back at her like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I didn't do anything special, but I don't know. I still haven't gotten it.
Lucky you.
Yeah. Well, Pastor Key, we're thinking about you. We are really sad, actually. Speaking of Pastor Key and testing positive, you know, part of the reason why it's kind of like harder for the fact that Pastor Key got COVID was that he wasn't able to join us this past weekend, and it was a very full and busy weekend.
Yeah, it was. It was a great Easter weekend.
Yes, Easter weekend 2023. And I thought maybe what we could do is we could just spend a little bit of time sort of recapping kind of how the weekend went. I mean, we've done this multiple times already, but maybe just for the ones that are watching and the ones that are listening, maybe it might be good for them to kind of, you know, hear it from us. But this past weekend, like I said, it was Easter weekend. And, you know, for Christians, it's kind of like the big thing on the calendar, right? In the Christian calendar, like everything just points to Easter weekend, Good Friday, and also Easter Sunday. And this weekend, we did something a little bit different.
Yes.
Because on Good Friday, when normally in this region there is there's a joint Good Friday thing. Yeah,
with almost all the churches.
Yeah. We just decided to do something of our own. And I think it went pretty well. What do you think?
I think so. I liked it. Yeah. It was like a new style that we hadn't done with like our congregation. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then after Good Friday, we had the Easter egg hunt.
Yes.
Community Easter egg hunt.
Yes, we did.
Which we've been announcing for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that. How did the Easter egg hunt turn out?
It was amazing. I think for a while we had like 50 people signed up.
Yep.
And then in the last like 3 days, it just got like it went from 50 to like 160 something. And then on count, we had like 205 people show up.
Yeah.
Yeah. The cops came.
Yeah.
Not because we were in trouble or anything.
Right. You got to make sure.
Yeah,
we didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, we weren't shady out here. But I think somebody from the town had asked if this was like an open event for anybody.
Yeah.
So they didn't know about it. So they just came over and, you know, they had some sandwiches, hung out for a little bit. And then, you know, everything was honky-dory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, 200.
Yeah.
Last year, what were the numbers last year?
120.
120. So to go from 120 to, nearly 85% increase to 200. I mean, like, well, I sadly couldn't be on the field with you because I was busy rehearsing with the band for Easter Sunday.
Yeah.
So I missed out on just being able to stand on the field. Like, how was it? The scale of everything? Was it?
I mean, it was double what we did last year.
Yeah.
We had just as many eggs because last year we had like 3,000 eggs.
Yeah.
And that was like a lot of eggs. Yep. But this year we did the same amount, but we didn't have any left over. And then we ordered like another bouncy house thing. It was just everything was bigger.
Yeah.
Everything was bigger. And then, because we had we hired the same bouncy house as last year. Like they gave us free things.
Yep.
It was like awesome. Yeah. And we had an ice cream truck.
Man, that's the thing I am most sad about. I missed out on the ice cream.
Yeah. I was like, I'm going to pay for this. Everybody get your own. Go ahead. Go get your ice cream because I'm going to pay for this. And then that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then just people like where our high school is, it's in a residential area. So like some of our neighbors came and, people who didn't RSVP, of course, we let them in.
Yeah.
And everybody had a great time. Everybody seemed really happy. The weather turned up really good because in the beginning it was like cold and windy. And then eventually the sun came out. And so shout out to all the pastors and all the people who had outdoor events who were praying.
Yes.
Because on the way to the event, I was like, God, I can't bring the sun.
Yeah.
But you can.
Yes. Yeah,
I was like, you can do that. So can you please?
Yep.
Yeah.
Come, Lord Jesus.
Yeah, and he heard my prayers.
Yeah. It was a little. Yeah, I was worried a little bit because I was with you in the morning right when we got there. It's a little chilly.
Yeah.
Little bit. But the temperature and all that stuff turned out to be okay.
Yeah, as the day progressed, it just got like warmer.
Yeah.
The sun came out like full blast. Like by the time it was like 12 o'clock, 12:30, which was like right at the time we were doing the hunt, the egg hunt itself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, everything was good. People seemed really happy. The kids were crazy.
Yeah.
They're going wild because we had a lot of stuff.
I can imagine.
Face painting, balloons, like all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are kids who got like 5 ice creams. So our bill tells me.
Yes.
No, I'm kidding.
Yes.
So, yeah, it was really good. It was nice to see a lot of unfamiliar faces. I think if last year it was like 1-to-1 ratio where a lot of our people invited their friends, so it's like 1-to-1. This year we had a lot of people that didn't go to our church. And some people didn't go to church, period.
Yeah.
So it was nice to meet, different people. Yeah, and hopefully, I mean, I don't know, maybe our church will be in the back of their mind and one day they'll walk in through our doors.
Yeah.
That's always the hope and that's always the desire. But I think the thing that we did differently this year was we partnered with Children's Aid and Family Services, or we did like a fundraiser for them for their Baby Basics program, which is the program that gives diapers, formula, clothes to low-income families. And so we did a fundraiser. We got a good amount of cash donations, but we also got donations online, which was awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm just waiting to tally everything. And whatever we have left over from our Easter egg hunt budget, we're going to give. So, those numbers are going to get rolled out on social media. So if you're wondering how much was collected, please check out our social media, our Instagram at New Mercy Palisades.
Yeah. It was a fantastic event. I mean, everyone that I spoke to, especially the ones that brought their kids.
Yeah.
Everyone that I spoke to personally just said it was a great event. It was wonderfully planned. It was, wonderfully executed. And so, hey, kudos to you. I mean, 2nd year in a row.
I know. But honestly, I had such a great team.
Yes.
I had, there was Julie on decorations. She's just really good at that.
Yeah.
And then we had Yenna who organized the food. And then we had Gina who stuffed all the 3,000 something eggs. Man. I mean, thank God she got 2 kids who could help her. But dang, there was a lot of eggs, you know?
Yeah.
So all of them on their own, they did like such a great job. We only needed 1 Zoom meeting. It's impressive.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the volunteers, I can't, there's so many that helped on the day of, but everybody, just all the hands. Without it, we can't do it, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm so thankful to have had such a great team who just get it. They just got it.
For sure.
Yeah. So it was really good.
Yeah.
Really great.
Well-oiled machine.
Yes.
Wonderfully run event. And for a good cause, Children's Aid and Family Services, Baby Basics, providing support and diapers and formula and all these things to, expectant or new mothers that maybe can't afford those things on their own. And so it was a wonderful cause, wonderful event, wonderful team, wonderful people, wonderful Saturday.
Yes.
And then the sort of big exclamation point on the weekend, we had Easter Sunday.
Yes, we did.
And it was a fantastic time. We were able to put a full band together, and it was the first time. It was really nice. The first time since our Christmas sing-along.
Yes, that's right.
We had a full team. And man, I just miss it. I really miss being able to play with a full band right now. Just with volunteers and availability, sometimes it's just me up there with a guitar. And man, being able to just sing worship songs with everybody in the room, with a full band behind you, it just hits different, you know what I mean?
Yes, it does.
So we had a full band, we had a video transition, we had a short and wonderful and powerful message by you. Actually, somebody said, because we have to do everything without Pastor Key. Pastor Key, we love you. We still love you. So please don't hate us for this. But somebody said, because your message was pretty short.
Yeah.
I think at most 15 minutes.
Yeah.
If that. I don't think it even scratched 15 minutes.
It's probably like 12.
Something like that.
And then like a 3-minute response.
Yeah, for sure. And so one of the instrumentalists was like, he doesn't go to our church. He's actually my brother. And my brother was like, is it always this short? Because I might switch services to those. And I was like, no, it is not.
Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah. But that's just our little way, right? To try to be a little bit more friendly to the ones that don't always come to our services. Yeah. We keep the true preaching for our people. We'll say it like that.
I guess.
Yeah. So, I mean, what can I say about this weekend other than it was fantastic?
Yeah.
So many wonderful blessings continued to flow all throughout the weekend.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, I was a zombie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I woke up Monday. I was like, somebody beat me. I swear. I was like, I swear somebody beat me in my sleep.
Yeah.
Because I was just laying there. I woke up and I was like, ow.
Yeah. You know what? I had a similar thought. I didn't, maybe not right when I woke up, it felt like a bomb went off. And you know how like when you watch movies, a bomb goes off and it doesn't do the boom, but like it's that silence. It's that like, yeah. I woke up, I was like, it was like, that's just like my whole body was reeling from the weekend. Yeah. But later, like I finally get up and I was like in my kitchen and I reached up to grab the cabinet and open it, and I felt sore. I was like, "What did I do?" Oh yeah, Easter weekend. Yeah. It just was so much effort, so much time. But yeah, I was zonked out on Monday. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I don't even remember what I did on Monday. Like, how did you recover?
I got froyo.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I got frozen yogurt.
Yeah.
At Yogurt.
Yogurt, yeah.
In Edgewater.
Yeah.
That's the best place right now on my list. But I think actually on Monday I spent a lot of time outside. I was at Overpeck Park. Mm-hmm. I was outside eating froyo. Just like a lot of time. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, not Overpeck. I was like by the water looking at like the skyline. Yeah. The New York skyline. Yeah. Yeah. It was really, I just spent a lot of time outside because it was so nice on Monday too. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. And then that's what I did. That's all I remember, being outside and eating froyo. Yeah. What did you do?
I was home basically most of the day just because I think I said like my wife had all of like a 10 or 15-minute conversation all day. Because for whatever reason, she was busier on Monday than she was all weekend. And trust me, she was doing a lot throughout the weekend.
She was.
But somehow she was like busier on Monday because just like all the plans crashed down on Monday, and like she was here, she was there, she joined you for Froyo, and so I basically had the house to myself, and I was just sort of sitting there zoning out, just reveling in the alone time, as my wife and I call it. And so that's basically what I did. I might have gone to the driving range for like an hour in the evening. Yeah. But besides that, I was home like all day. Yeah. Just because that's what I needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, this Easter weekend was like the first in like many years that I've actually felt like it was Easter. I think because like for a while, like I think like as a pastor, sometimes you don't get to fully enjoy, these things because you're so caught up and busy, or there's just so many things that you have to take care of that you don't forget, but you don't get to fully like immerse yourself in the celebration of Easter, the resurrected King. And I feel like even though like on my end there were so many things that I had to do last minute, through it all, I feel like I got to really enjoy Easter and celebrate and have even just like having this heart of celebration, not like, oh, this is another thing, another Sunday. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? It's interesting that you say that. I felt a similar kind of a thing too. I mean, last year kind of was a harder year because right around this time we kind of, we were going through something in our church, and like before that, I wasn't really serving anywhere. We were still sort of like on the back half of the pandemic, but we were still sort of in that pandemic mode and rhythm. A couple Easters of that. And then prior to that, like I wasn't serving anywhere. So I think you're right. Like, or I at least share the sentiment with you that maybe this year, for the first time in a while, I felt a kind of, man, like Jesus really is alive. And I got to, like you obviously feel that in your personal life. You kind of live the relationship that you have with the resurrected Christ in your personal life. But there's something about on the day, marking the moment, and doing that in community, right? Like I spent a lot of years sort of being like a solo guy, meaning maybe I went to church on Easter Sunday, maybe I didn't, maybe I served, maybe I wasn't, but like I was just sort of doing my own thing or whatever. And the idea of being tethered to a church community, I think, like it really is sort of healing a lot of those like seasons where I was just like running and gunning like doing that solo stuff. Yeah. And I wondered if, because like the other thing that I sort of wanted to talk about was this idea of like how important community is to the life, to the expression of the church, right? Because like everything that we talk about in this podcast, everything that we talk about in church services and all that stuff, like even just between you and I in private conversations, like, yes, there are personal beliefs and personal, like everyone needs to just work out their own salvation, fear and trembling, all that stuff. But what really kind of came alive to me this weekend, and maybe it's just a good reminder, if anything, was that the community is so important. Yeah. When it comes to like remembrance, marking the significance of certain things throughout the Christian calendar, like celebrating, I mean, Richard Foster in his book Celebration of Discipline, he even like puts celebration, like that's right, the spiritual discipline of celebration. He includes that in his book. And I don't know how you celebrate outside of community. It's hard. You can't be like a lone man party. Yeah. I throw my own confetti. Yeah. Yes. That's not fun. Yeah. It's not nearly as fun. Right. Yeah. And so, I mean, I wanted to press into that a little bit, especially given the fact that like we just got off this weekend and the significance of this weekend, the significance of like understanding where we are, right? Because we don't, like, when it comes to Christianity, we're not necessarily beholden to the laws of certain things, right?
Right.
What I mean to say is, like, you don't really have to. You don't have to go to church on Easter Sunday.
Yeah.
You don't have to go and take communion. You don't have to mark these like certain things throughout the Christian holiday, right? But these are good things. These are good things to take part in because it tethers you to a larger thing, right? And so, like, I wondered if you could just speak into that, like, moments in which you just felt a truth that you know and you hold dear to your heart, but it's somehow amplified in community.
Yeah, I mean, just like this weekend, for example, like on Sunday, I preached on John 3:16.
Yeah.
For God so loved the world.
Yeah.
And I feel like I know God saved me. Like, I know God came for me. But God came for the world, and that sounds so big.
Yeah.
But when I look at, like, as I was preaching, I looked at our congregation, I was like, he came for us.
Yeah.
You know? And that truth, I think, was even more, like, came alive to me. Because I could put, now I'm putting faces to the word world almost, you know, in that verse. So, yeah. And I almost feel like, you know, like, you can't do Christianity by yourself. And I think that's very contrary to, like, the popular culture right now.
Yeah.
It's very individualistic. It's very my truth.
Yeah.
But when you get a group of people under the same, not just beliefs, but I guess, I mean, we're a part of God's family, right? In the same family, like, it's just different. It's just different, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. Like, celebration is a thing that's really, to me, amplified in community. I might even go so far as to say, like, the spiritual discipline of prayer, right? Like, and it's weird, right? The interplay between something that we call, like, the secret place. Like, don't we always talk about the secret place? And we talk about, like, you got to cultivate your own secret place with the Lord. And I believe that that's true. But, like, it's Wednesday, and on Wednesday nights we get together for prayer.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we get together for prayer.
Yeah.
I think that it is important when the body comes together, not only because it's just another time for prayer, but literally, like, the act of people coming together in one room. I forget who said it, but it's like, when two or three gather, like that phrase, we say that oftentimes, and they were sort of putting, like, new life and breathing new meaning into it, saying, like, when two or three gather, there's a thing there where, like, usually we think in terms of addition. 1 + 1 = 2, 2 + 2 = 4. But someone was saying one time how, like, when it comes to the kingdom, and especially when it comes to prayer, 1 + 1 does not equal 2. 2 + 2 does not equal 4. Instead of addition, it's more like multiplication.
I see.
It's more like when one person prays, it's powerful. When two people pray, it's even more so, and, like, more and more and more, right? Like, I think prayer is amplified. The truth of prayer, the what prayer does, it's amplified in community.
I was actually thinking the other day, because, I don't know, like, I grew up in the Korean church, right? As did you.
Sure.
And there's this thing that they do where the pastor goes, oh, it's time to pray.
Yeah.
And they say, Jesus 3 times. And they start going, like, crazy on the prayer. And I think, like, as you were talking, that's what I was reminded of. Like, that there's something that happens when, like, when this room echoes your heart.
Yeah.
I think that's, and especially when the Spirit brings unity.
Yeah.
Through prayer in that way, I think it's just, like, that's unmatched. You can't describe what that is or how that even happened, and there's no way to replicate it.
Yeah.
But when it happens, it's like, for lack of a better word, it's like magical.
Yeah.
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 Oh my God, I'm like getting chills thinking about it.
I mean, me too. I mean, it's that old thing of, like, you scream Chuya 3 times.
Yeah.
And after you just scream out your prayers, and there's like a reckless abandon because you don't care about who's on your left, your right, in front of you, or behind you.
Yeah.
But it's almost like they're also yelling.
Yes.
And they're also just desperately like
it's like
at
a
the
war
top.
cry.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, I'm gonna join this thing, and it's going to take me and elevate me to a place, right? Like so much of what we do, and I wonder if like, whether it's Easter weekend or so many other things that we do in our church and in our culture, right? Like we're fighting the individualistic culture of like the West, the Northeastern corridor or whatever, right? Like modern day culture. But for a lot of us, people like that look like us, that share our background in history, Korean Americans growing up in the church, I particularly like struggle with the language, and like there are just some things that I could never say to my father in particular because he speaks like 3 languages and English is the 3rd one. You know what I mean? Like, and there are just some times when I want to say something or I could feel like he wants to say it, and like that is compounded to an entire community of like elders and fathers and mothers in the church, and for those of us who grew up in that context, we're also fighting the thing that draws us back to there, the kind of high honor, less individualistic, kind of like fit in with everybody else. And so it's weird because like people like us, and I know like at times you have felt this too, right? We're stuck in this tension between not wanting to be like the world, but also not wanting to be like our parents.
Yeah. But I think of course we're going to be different from our parents' generation. And of course we have to figure out our way in the world. Like, how do we live in it but not of it, right? That's always the thing. But I think a part of that might be embracing some of the things that we think are weird. Or like, I know I've had conversations where people are like, I don't know why they used to scream like that during prayer. And I'm like, but did you participate though? Like, do you know the magic that happens when you in participation with your community like that? And I think once we begin to like embrace more of our like cultural and also almost like spiritual, because like a lot, I don't know why, but there are these distinctions, right? Like, this is charismatic. This is not. I'm not charismatic, so it's almost like I can't be like that. And I'm like, it don't matter if you're Presbyterian or Pentecostal, Baptist, whatever you are. Like all these Korean folks, like our our elders, they be crying out like Jesus, like crazy. And then they like barely clap during hymns. But they're like, when they start praying, they like go loose. And it doesn't matter that they're conservative or that they're charismatic. It's just the same all across the board. And I feel like that's something to be embraced.
Absolutely.
And I feel like it could almost add to our experience, as a community on a personal level, but also as a community, as a corporate body of Christ. Like, so I think that's a part of like almost like the Korean American figuring out like, how do we live out this faith?
Right. No, hey, I'm with you on that. Like I'm reminded of a story. I'm not sure that I shared this before, but I'm reminded of a story. Like I was like early 20s, and I was serving somewhere as like the worship director, and I forget how it got back to me, but at this church, like kind of like I'm doing now a lot of weeks, where I was just like the one guy on the guitar, and it was a very small congregation. It was like maybe like 5 or 6 people in the room at times, but upwards of 10, 15, maybe 20 on really good weeks. In any case, I'm the primary guy doing worship, and I'm leading, and I'm just trying to be faithful doing that. And eventually one of the critiques that sort of got back to my ears was something about like the worship being a little too long and emotional. And I was like, that's such a strange critique. I get it.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. Like, I get it, and I get where it comes from. But it when I really think about it, and in my reading of scripture and in my reading of the Bible, like, it's such a strange critique, because I don't know what part of the Bible that you're reading that causes you not to get emotional, or like, I don't know what part of the Bible that you're reading that shows a picture of a God who is not jealous, angry, passionate, joyful at times. You know, it's like, I don't know what version of the Bible you're reading that you don't see an emotional God. And so, you know, like, I didn't say anything to the person, but in my mind, and I used to turn over my head, like, too long and emotional. You didn't, like, do you not know God? Like, what is your version of God that you worship? You know? And the other reason why I always thought it was a strange kind of a thing, a critique, was because I very clearly could see, can remember, like, my parents, our parents' generations, and when they were in church and when they would pray, when they would worship, they had no problem going 40, 50, 55 minutes, an hour long worship prayer, and they would cry, and it's like, there's something to desperation. That simple logic, reasoning, theology just won't unlock. And that's another one of those things where it's just unlocked, it's amplified in community. So much of what we're talking about right now, like Korean American identity, trying to navigate it, trying to understand where our emotions play into the whole thing of it all, right? Like, so much of that can just be amplified, I think.
It's nice to know that you're not the only emotional person. Like, it's nice to know that, like, the person next to you shares your passion, shares your, you know, like, desperation. I think there's no way God cannot show up when a group of believers are in unison about how desperate they are for God's presence. And I think, like, just like doing a comparison, I think our parents' generation were so desperate for many things, you know, like, even practical things, job security, like, legal status, you know, like, the children's future, their, you know, all these needs. And then I always say that our generation, we are beneficiaries of all the prayers that like the older generation poured into our generation, you know? And it's like, so imagine how desperate, what kind of blessings, what kind of change can happen if our generation was just as desperate, if not more, for the next and the next and the next. You know, so that's also a thing, right? Like, where it's like amplified in community, that desperation and the change that comes with desperation. I mean, it's undeniable. I don't think we got here on our own. There's no way. There's no way. Even if you didn't grow up in church, like, you benefited from the people that was praying for this generation.
Of course,
Because they weren't just praying for their kids. They're praying for their kids' friends. They're praying for the school, like, all of that. You know, like, favor upon favor upon favor. Like, imagine what we can do. You know?
So then, how do you think, well, number one, how do you think we got here to the maybe less desperate place?
We got comfortable. We got rich. We got comfortable. We got our legal statuses right.
Our parents' prayers were too effective.
They did something right. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you know, that's the difference, right? Like, their heart of desperation was almost motivated by a certain lack. A very real lack that they have that we don't have to face in our reality. But there is, I think, a different type of lack that we have in our generation. And I think it's like the psychological, mental, spiritual, which our parents' generation didn't even have time to think about because they were so worried about what's going to happen tomorrow. Am I going to have food on the table for my kids? Right? And so when we look at the comforts of our lives, it's so easy to be like, oh, my life is good. But when you close the doors, the things that happen behind the closed doors, that's where it gets like desperate. But people are really good at hiding their desperation in that way, because that's not something you can see with your eyes. That's not things that other people can see unless you're in it like really deep, right? So I think those are the two different.
Yeah. I was at a retreat one time, and the pastor I don't think it was a throwaway, but this wasn't his main point, but he was saying something to the effect of our parents' great struggle was survival. Yeah. Our great struggle is meaning. And I wonder if, taking that thought a little bit further, and we remember our parents in churches and the screaming 주여 3 times, 주여 just meaning Jesus, right? Like, or God, like God in heaven. I wonder if we just take that idea a little bit further. It's to say, like, I remember, like our parents' generation, they weren't just struggling for meaning, but they were desperate for meaning. I'm sorry, survival. Survival, yeah. They weren't just, struggling for survival, but they were desperate for survival. Yeah. Right. And they got it. And now for us, like, our maybe we struggle with meaning, but are we desperate for it? Are we desperate for like understanding what our identity is in Christ? Yeah. Are we desperate for building communities, building churches, building entire like regions of faith in which we just know beyond a shadow of our doubt that our identity is in Christ, number one, and every identity thereafter is built on that. Yeah. Right?
I mean, we moved from a very communal identity, like the village mindset, to a very individualistic, you don't get to tell my kid anything type of mentality. And, I'm not saying that one is better than the other, but I think in that transition, like things got lost. That might be more what I would categorize as like essential to the Christian faith. Sure. That caring for your brothers and like going beyond. Because like if you look in the Bible, there's so many, like they shared everything they had. They sold everything they had and gave to the person in need. Yeah. That's what it says in the Bible, right? Yeah. That type of heart. Not saying like you gotta go do that, But I think there are just some things that could be helpful in finding that meaning if we kind of not just looked at our like parents' generation, but just like looked into the Bible. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Can we get there?
I think so. The one thing I was always impressed about our church, I'm not trying to like, pat ourselves on the back, but I always felt like we did a really good job taking care of one another, especially during the pandemic in the beginning. Yeah. I felt like, as many churches, they did care packages, blah, 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 but just the amount of like contact people had with one another in a safe way. Like I was just so impressed, and I felt like, oh, this is something we're really good at. And I feel like even now it's like carrying on. Yeah. But it's yeah. Sometimes I don't know. Yeah.
Well, you got to say it now.
No, I don't have anything to say.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Just even in the time that I've been here, like just over a year, I feel like a crystal clear example of that is there are 2 very recent births in our community and our family. Yeah. And like as soon as the word, birth comes out of our mouths as a community, we also do things like meal trains and taking care of people and just trying to make sure that everyone is okay and get taken care of with food, which in and of itself is a very like to me it reminds me so much of like Korean upbringing. Yeah. And like we still carry that DNA. Like the one thing that Koreans know how to do is to make sure that you have food on the table and that you have like like that your stomach is full of food, right? Yeah, so like I love that we do that. I love that we're quick to do that. And I wondered like maybe in keeping with the rest of this conversation, I wonder if if there are other things that are so, like if we, meal trains and taking care of people and food, right? Like fellowship food for us, like is a huge part of what we do as our Sunday expression.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's one of like the really big things that can be closely associated with our community. I wonder if there's a thing that like we can make other things just as relevant, just as like quickly associated with our community as well. Things like desperation, prayer, and all these things.
I don't think it's just our church. Because in my conversations with other pastors and leaders, I think it's come up a few times or a good amount of times where like faith feels very individualistic still. And I think, it's nice that we do meal trains and we can care for one another. Of course we should. But I think there is something about that corporate, like spiritual fellowship. Yeah, not just fellowship, but like spiritual fellowship. Whether it's in like family groups or like whatever, or even in like, I don't know, women's groups or, prayer groups, whatever it may be, that faith is like testimonies are shared and faith is shared and struggles are shared together rather than just having to figure it out, feeling like you have to figure it out on your own.
Yeah.
And part of that comes with like being vulnerable, right? Like you got to be vulnerable to a certain extent and not try to like or like be okay with the fact that like maybe you are having doubts or maybe you are struggling with a certain sin or like whatever, and like feeling like it's safe to open that area of your life instead of just the physical or social needs that you have.
Well, I mean, my great belief, especially with our church and especially with like the people in our church, the wonderful, wonderful people in our church, and, the leadership by, God primarily, but also like through Pastor Key and we have a hand in that, and our elders and our deacons and all that stuff. I believe that we can get there, but I also think that it's going to be a very interesting and intentional, like it's going to take a lot of intentionality just to get there, right? Like I feel like in so many ways our community, and I'll only speak to our community right now.
Sure.
But I feel like in so many ways our community has kind of relied on its natural gifting and its natural sort of leaning of like,
I see.
Like we're really good anyway at like welcoming newcomers, and we're really good anyway at being really good in a room together. We're really good anyway because it's close to our DNA of like treating somebody to a meal or providing food or putting meal trains together. We're really good anyway at that. But I wondered if the next season of our church, the next season of growth of our church, I wonder if it would take people stepping outside of themselves and doing things that aren't so natural to them.
Yeah.
And just doing them and being as faithful as they can be so that we become really good at those things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I like that.
Yeah. I think a lot of people desire prayer in our church. I think a lot of people have verbalized, I want our church to be a church of prayer and blah, 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 right? I think there are a few things like between now and the vision that they have in their minds about what our church can be when it comes to prayer. And sometimes I just want to be like, well, I mean, you got to step outside yourself.
Yeah.
Like when was the last time you just, for no reason at all, you just went up to somebody and said like, hey, I need to pray for you.
Yeah.
I just need to pray for you. I'm going to pray for you, right? Like when was the last time you just pulled somebody aside in service, or you just pulled somebody away during fellowship and you just be like, I have a word for you. I got to share it because if I don't, I feel like I'm being disobedient. You know what I mean? Like, when was the last time people did that?
Yeah. I think when you step out of your comfort zone, there's always going to be growth.
Yeah.
There's always going to be some type of revelation that comes to you.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you're stepping out, but stepping in deeper into the things that look more like heaven, then why wouldn't God bless that? I think that's generally my stance. And so I love to see like just not just pockets of people, but that become almost like our culture.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, I think that would be so cool.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even have to look like what it always used to look like.
Right.
Meaning it doesn't just have to be the prayer team that prays for you.
Right.
Or like whatever. We can all do that for each other.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So I think like some of the things that we do during Wednesday Well is like at the end of prayer, sometimes we partner up and we pray for one another. And that's like an exercise, but it's also so you know that you don't have to carry your burdens by yourself and that God is listening to you.
Yeah.
Because there's somebody that walks in that like I remember, I think like maybe last year. Oh yeah. I think last year I was like, man, I wish somebody would pray for me. That was a desire I had. And I didn't say it to nobody. That I was at home like just thinking that. And then Rala, Pastor Key's wife, she like FaceTime. She said, I want to FaceTime you. I was like, okay. So we're talking. And she's like, can I pray for you? And I was like, the Lord knows. And I told her, I was like, hey, I was just like, I literally like an hour ago was thinking, I wish somebody would pray for me. And look at you now praying for me.
Yeah.
Like, that marked my life.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. Like, even though it was such a little happy incident, but like to me, that's not just a happy incident. That's a God moment.
Yeah.
Like God's listening to my heart.
Yeah.
You know? So I'm hoping like the more we do things like that, the more we like step out into those things, that it would be God's like answered prayer for that person.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, for sure. Just to kind of find a landing point for this, I'll end with a quick little story. And this is really just to shout out my wife, give her some props in this department because I try not to get too specific about it, but she was telling me the story about how one night she just like had a dream about one of the members of our church.
Yeah.
And she didn't even like, we were so busy, like it was like this past weekend. We were so busy, we didn't really get to connect and talk. So she was saying how like she didn't even like get to tell me. It's like sometimes she'll tell me about the dreams that she has. I didn't even have time to ask her about it because I was so busy that day. And so like she was saying how she had a dream about one of the members of our church, and that night she saw that person. Yeah. And she just decided to share that dream to that person. And she was kind of like just saying, hey, like, isn't this so funny? And that person, after hearing the dream and hearing that my wife had a dream about this person just said, basically, like, that's a confirmation of something like very deep in my heart. Yeah. And when she told me that story later, I was like, I was trying not to like overplay the hand or whatever, but there was so much of me that loved that happened, right? Like that it didn't have to flow through me, that it didn't have to flow through anyone else, but it was just my wife had a dream and she shared it and she didn't put any ministry on it. The sharing was the ministry. Yeah. The just saying, hey, I had this thing and I want to share that to you. And so, like it increases faith, and faith, another one of those things that just gets amplified in community, like desperation, prayer, all of these things that we're talking about, right? Like all of it, I feel like so much of this stuff gets amplified in community. And hopefully we become a church that's able to get there. Hopefully we're able to not only rely on our natural giftings as like Korean Americans or people with a certain history and heritage, but we're able to say like, I see something in the Bible and I'm going to do it. Yeah. And it's awkward at first and it's weird and I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it because I feel like that's what God is calling me to do. Yeah. Right? So yeah. Let's keep praying for that. Yeah. For our community. And if you're listening, if you're watching, you also pray for that. Pray for yourselves. Pray that God kind of shows you maybe what the next steps are in your own life and what you should be doing, how you can be progressing and advancing the kingdom and building that life of faith that you want to, and becoming much more than just like a passive Christian, but actually like taking a hold of your faith and making something of it. Let's hope for that.
Amen.
Yeah. This will be a good place to end it. Pastor Key, we're thinking about you. We miss you. We haven't seen you in a while. It'll be like a week tomorrow, I think, since he's had to quarantine. If you're listening, watching, please pray for Pastor Key. Pray for us, pray for this community, pray for our church. If you want to get more involved, or if you want to know what's going on, you can go to our socials out there on Facebook or on Instagram at New Mercy Palisades. Go to our website, go wherever you can go to sort of stay on board with everything that's going on. We'll be back next week with another new episode. And until then, we hope that you are blessed. And this is NMPC Plus, signing off for now.